My name is Leia. I'm 32, and for the last few years, my world has been built around two people, my wife, Neria, and our incredible 13-year-old daughter, Idara. The clinking of silverware against ceramic plates seemed unusually loud in the sudden silence. Across the polished oak of our dining table, my younger sister, Aroa, beamed, her newly engaged glow almost blinding under the soft pendant lighting. Her fiancé, Unai, sat beside her, looking proud and a little overwhelmed. "We're just so excited," Aroa was saying, her hands clasped together. "And we're so grateful to have you, Leia. You've always been the rock of this family." I offered a warm, genuine smile. "Of course. I'm thrilled for you both. And you know I'm happy to help you get started with a significant contribution for the wedding." Neria, my wife, squeezed my hand under the table. She knew my history of being the family's designated problem solver and, let's be honest, it's ATM. Aroa's smile widened. "Oh, I know. That's why we wanted to be really prepared." She reached into a large designer tote bag and pulled out a thick, white binder, sliding it across the table with a dramatic flourish. It landed in front of me with a solid thud. Inside were pages of glossy photos, spreadsheets, and vendor contracts. It was a battle plan for a wedding. A very, very expensive battle plan. "We've budgeted everything out," Unai said proudly. "It comes to almost exactly 50,000. I nodded slowly, flipping through a page detailing a $5,000 ice sculpture. "It's comprehensive. And we expect you to cover it," Aroa said, her tone shifting from celebratory to matter-of-fact. "It's the least you can do for your only sister." I looked up from the binder, my smile faltering. "Aroa, $50,000 is an enormous amount of money. I said I would help, but I can't fund the entire event." Her face soured instantly. The cheerful bride-to-be vanished, replaced by someone cold and entitled. She sneered, a truly ugly expression, and flicked her eyes towards the mantelpiece, where a framed photo of our daughter, Idara, sat beaming. "Why not?" she spat. "You had no problem spending a fortune on your little charity case over there. What's 50 grand for your real family?" The air in the room didn't just go cold, it evaporated. I felt the blood drain from my face. Neria's hand tightened on mine like a vice. I stared at my sister, the sound of those two words, charity case, echoing in the sudden, deafening silence. I couldn't form a sentence. I just stood up, my chair scraping harshly against the floor. "Get out," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Both of you. Get out of my house. Now." After the front door clicked shut, leaving a void where my sister and her fiancé had been, I sank back into my chair. The half-eaten celebratory dinner on our plates felt like a mockery. Neria came and wrapped her arms around my shoulders from behind, her chin resting on my head. We just stood there for a long moment, the silence thick with unspoken rage. My mind, however, was anything but silent. It was a whirlwind, a chaotic slideshow of past hurts, with Aroa's latest cruelty as the horrifying centerpiece. That phrase, charity case, wasn't just a random insult flung in a moment of anger. It was the key that unlocked what I now saw as a museum of pain, a collection of slights and cruelties I had subconsciously archived for years. My mind flashed back to 2 years ago. Idara, then 11, had poured her heart into her science fair project, a complex, motorized model of the solar system. She was so proud. Hours before the competition, Aroa had come over. There was a sudden crash from the living room, and we ran in to find the model in pieces on the floor, Saturn's rings snapped in two. "Oh my God, I'm so clumsy," Aroa had cried, putting a hand to her mouth. "Idara, you should have put it somewhere safer." The blame, so subtle yet so sharp, was shifted onto a devastated little girl. I'd stayed up all night with a hot glue gun and a prayer, helping my daughter piece her universe back together. Then there was last Christmas. Aroa had a habit of making her generosity a performance. She'd handed Neria a beautifully wrapped box containing a designer silk scarf. I received an expensive bottle of single malt scotch. Then, she'd turned to Adara and handed her a flimsy envelope. Inside was a $15 gift card to a convenience store. When I'd stared at her, bewildered, she'd just shrugged. "Oh, it's so hard," she'd sighed dramatically. "I just never know what to get for her." The implication hung in the air, she's not really one of us. The most venomous memory surfaced last. Our mother's funeral. Amidst the blur of grief and condolences, I overheard Aroa talking to a cousin. She hadn't bothered to lower her voice. "Well, Leia's burden is even bigger now," she'd said, her gaze drifting pointedly towards Adara, who was clutching my hand. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't about money. It had never been just about money. This was a deep-seated resentment, a poison that Aroa had been dripping into our lives for years, aimed squarely at the person I loved most in the world. "You see it now, don't you?" Neria whispered, her voice gentle but firm, as if reading my thoughts. "You've been making excuses for her for years. Your kindness isn't a virtue to them, Leia. It's a weakness to be exploited." And in that moment, I knew she was right. The next morning, the doorbell rang with an aggressive, insistent buzz. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and opened the door to find Aroa on my porch, her arms crossed, her face a mask of indignation. Unai was nowhere in sight. She hadn't come to apologize. She'd come for a fight. "I can't believe you," she started, pushing past me into the foyer. "You completely humiliated me in front of my fiancé. Do you have any idea how that made me look?" I calmly closed the door behind her. "You humiliated yourself, Aroa. With what you said about my daughter." She actually rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. You're blowing one little comment way out of proportion. It was a joke. A bad one, maybe, but you can't be serious. Unai thinks our family is completely dysfunctional now, thanks to you." My blood ran cold. The complete lack of remorse, the way she twisted it to make me the villain, it was breathtaking. "So you're not sorry," I stated, my voice flat. "Sorry for what?" "For wanting my successful, wealthy sister to help me have the wedding of my dreams?" "For pointing out the obvious," she shot back, her voice rising. "Look, just transfer the money. We can forget this whole thing ever happened. 50,000. That's all it will take to fix this." She held out her hand as if expecting me to hand her a check right then and there. I stared at her, at this stranger who wore my sister's face, and a profound, chilling clarity washed over me. The part of me that had always wanted to keep the peace, to smooth things over, simply died. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice as cold and hard as steel. "Right now." That evening, the house was quiet. The storm of Aroa's confrontation had passed, leaving behind a heavy, toxic silence. Neria and I found Adara in her room, curled up on her window seat, reading a book. She looked so small, so innocent. My heart ached with a ferocity that was almost physical. We sat down with her, one on each side. "Hey, sweetie," I began, my voice softer than I intended. "Can we talk to you for a minute?" She put her book down, her eyes wary. She knew something was wrong. "Adara," Neria said gently, taking her hand. "We just need to ask you something, and we need you to be really honest with us. Has Aunt Aroa ever said anything that made you feel bad?" Adara's reaction was immediate and heartbreaking. Her shoulders tensed, and she wouldn't meet our eyes. She just stared at her lap, picking at a loose thread on her jeans. "It's okay," she mumbled. "She doesn't mean it." "What doesn't she mean, honey?" I pressed, my voice trembling slightly. That's when the dam broke. Tears welled up in her big, brown eyes and spilled down her cheeks. In a small, choked voice, she confessed everything. It wasn't just the passive-aggressive comments I had witnessed. It was so much worse. For years, whenever Aroa was alone with her, she'd been cruel. She'd told Adara that she was just our charity project, a way for us to look good. She'd called her a stray we'd picked up off the street. And then came the most poisonous dart of all. She said that once you and Mom Neria have a real baby, Adara whispered, the words tearing out of her like shrapnel, you'll send me away. The world tilted on its axis. It wasn't just a broken heart I felt, it was a detonation of pure, white-hot rage. My sister hadn't just insulted my daughter. She had been systematically, secretly, emotionally abusing her for years, planting seeds of fear and insecurity in the one place Adara was supposed to feel safest. My child had been carrying this burden alone, trying to protect us from a truth she thought would hurt us. In that moment, any lingering shred of familial obligation I felt for Aroa turned to ash. There was no line to cross anymore. She had burned the whole map. After Adara cried herself to sleep in my arms, I carried her to her bed and tucked her in, kissing her tear-stained cheek. Neria stood in the doorway, her face a mixture of grief and fury. When I walked out, she met my eyes, and no words were needed. We were in complete agreement. But I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I didn't even cry anymore. A strange, terrifying calm settled over me. It was the kind of calm that comes when all other options have been exhausted, when the path forward is no longer a choice, but a necessity. The emotional, peacekeeping Leia was gone. In her place was someone cold, methodical, and utterly resolute. I went to my home office and sat down at my computer. Neria brought me a cup of tea and just sat in the chair across from me, a silent, supportive sentinel. I didn't touch the tea. I opened my web browser and began to work. My fingers flew across the keyboard with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. I researched custodial college funds. I compared interest rates, account fees, and investment options across 3 different banks. I read reviews, downloaded forms, and compiled a list of required documents. There was no anger in my movements, just a chilling efficiency. I was no longer a sister or a daughter. I was a mother protecting her cub. I was forging a weapon. Not a weapon of anger, but one of justice. A weapon of love. I scheduled an appointment with a financial advisor for the next morning. The plan was set. Aroa wanted a war. She had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I walked into the downtown branch of a private bank. The air was cool and smelled of money and quiet ambition. I was led to a glass-walled office where a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and a warm smile stood to greet me. Her nameplate read, Itziar, Senior Financial Advisor. I sat down and, without any preamble, laid out my objective. I didn't tell her the family drama, the insults, or the tears. I kept it professional, clinical. I wanted to open a custodial college fund for my 13-year-old daughter. I wanted to make an initial deposit of $50,000. I wanted to discuss the most aggressive yet stable growth strategy for a 5-year horizon. Itziar listened intently, nodding. When I finished, she leaned forward, a look of genuine admiration on her face. Ms. Leia, she said, her voice crisp and professional, I have to tell you, opening a dedicated college fund for your daughter with a principal of this size is one of the most intelligent and impactful financial decisions a parent can make. You're not just spending money, you're investing in her future. This single act can change the trajectory of her life. Her words were like a balm to my raw, wounded soul. She wasn't just a banker, she was an external validator, an expert confirming the righteousness of my path. This wasn't revenge. This was a sound investment strategy. The paperwork was straightforward. I signed where she indicated, my signature firm and clear. The wire transfer from my savings account went through in minutes. Then, I made a final request. Could you please print an official, stamped account summary for me? I asked. I need a physical copy for my records. She nodded and, a few moments later, handed me a crisp sheet of paper. At the top, in bold, official lettering, it read, Custodial account for Idara. And below it, the current balance, $50,000. I held the paper in my hands. It felt heavier than just paper. It felt like security. It felt like justice. It felt like a mother's love, quantified and weaponized. I didn't go straight home. I sat in my car in the bank's parking garage, the engine off, the silence humming around me. I took the bank statement and laid it flat on the passenger seat. With steady hands, I took out my phone and snapped a clear, high-resolution photo of it, making sure the name, Idara, and the $50,000 figure were perfectly legible. Then, I began to type. My first target was Aroa. I opened our message thread, a long history of birthday wishes and casual check-ins that now seemed like a complete lie. I typed one final, ice-cold message. Aroa, you wanted $50,000 from me for a one-day party. After learning how you've been treating my daughter for years, I've decided to make a better investment. This money will now secure her future education. I've attached the confirmation. All financial support from me ends today. Do not ever contact my daughter again. I attached the photo of the bank statement. My thumb hovered over the send button for a single, final heartbeat. Then I pressed it. The blue message bubble appeared. Delivered. Read. I immediately blocked her number, cutting off the artery. Next, I opened the family group chat. The one with my brother, Gorka, and my uncle, T.O. Beltran. I forwarded the exact same message and photo, but added a preamble. For those of you who will undoubtedly be hearing a very different version of this story, here is the truth. This is the result of years of Aroa's emotional abuse towards my daughter, which I only learned about last night. Send. Finally, the masterstroke. I found Unai's email address from their engagement announcement. I composed a new message, its tone respectful but firm. I explained that my decision was not an attack on him or their wedding, but a necessary action to protect my child. I detailed, without emotion, the exact phrases Aroa had used: charity project, stray, will send you away. I ended it with, I believe you have a right to know the character of the person you are planning to marry. I attached the photo of the bank statement to that email as well. Send. I dropped the phone onto the seat beside the statement. It was done. I had not just built a wall, I had launched a tactical strike. And now, all I had to do was wait for the fallout. It didn't take long. By the time I got home, my phone was vibrating itself into a frenzy on the passenger seat. I had silenced the ringer, but the sheer volume of notifications made the screen light up like a strobe light. I walked into the house and placed it face down on the kitchen counter. Neria looked at me, a question in her eyes. I just nodded. She understood. Later that evening, out of a morbid sense of curiosity, I picked it up. 37 missed calls from Aroa. 15 from T.O. Beltran. 10 from my brother, Gorka. My voicemail inbox was full. I listened to the first one from Aroa. It was a screeching, incoherent mess of curses and threats. I deleted it. The next one was from T.O. Beltran. Leia, what have you done? His voice boomed, thick with disappointment. You are tearing this family apart over money. She's your sister. You apologize to her right now and you fix this. I deleted it. The message from Gorka was just a pathetic whine. Leia, seriously. I was going to ask you about a loan. How could you do this right now? Delete. They didn't get it. They never would. They saw a transaction, a financial dispute. They couldn't see the years of quiet cruelty, the systematic erosion of a child's sense of belonging. They didn't see a mother protecting her daughter. They saw an ATM that had suddenly gone out of service. And I felt nothing but the calm, cold certainty that I had finally done the right thing. The real news came a few days later, not through the furious family channels, but from a cousin who had always remained neutral. Unai had called off the wedding. He had left Aroa. My email, she said, hadn't been a surprise to him so much as a confirmation. It was the final, undeniable piece of evidence that validated a string of smaller doubts he'd been having about Aroa's character and her casual cruelty. He was disgusted and he was done. Aroa lost everything in one fell swoop: the fiancé, the dream wedding, and the family bank. The fallout was nuclear. My brother and uncle eventually went silent, realizing their attempts to guilt-trip me were useless. I calmly replied one last time to the family chat before leaving it for good: my boundary is drawn. Idara's future is my only priority. That night, there was no drama. There were no tears. Niria, Idara, and I ordered 3 different kinds of pizza and a tub of cookie dough ice cream. We spread college brochures across the living room floor, laughing as Idara debated the merits of marine biology in California versus veterinary science in Colorado. Seeing the genuine, secure, happy smile on my daughter's face, a smile free from the shadow of her aunt's poison, I knew, with every fiber of my being, that it was the best $50,000 I had ever spent. My family says I'm a monster for ruining my sister's life over a petty argument. But I would burn down the world to keep my daughter safe. So, you tell me, am I the asshole?